So, who is Claudio? Now, I'll be honest, there's really not that much to say about Claudio. He's a pretty weak character. He's pretty easily convinced by stupid things. He's manipulated by Don John not just once but twice. So Claudio's kind of views on women in general are very twisted. Unlike Beatrice and Benedict, I don't really see any equality between Claudio and Hero. It's a very weak kind of relationship. A lot of critics do say that Claudio is a foil for Benedict. So he is kind of that weaker version of Benedict. He kind of exists in order to highlight what an interesting character Benedict is. And that's kind of the same for Hero and Beatrice as well. Hero is kind of this conventional, weaker version of Beatrice, and these two, Claudio and Hero, are only really present to highlight how eccentric Beatrice and Benedict are in their unconventional views on marriage and love and relationships. Claudio and Hero actually have a very conventional view, and everything that happens to them in their relationship, it doesn't change or advance because of them. They are actually manipulated, especially Claudio. He is manipulated into believing certain things. I think this point that Claudio is a weaker version of Benedict is very interesting when we consider how Claudio is manipulated into believing certain things about Hero. He is essentially manipulated twice by Don John. That's meant to say times two, much in the same way that Benedict and Beatrice are manipulated into kind of falling in love by the rest of the characters in the play. Now, the difference between Claudio's manipulation and Beatrice and Benedict's manipulation is that Claudio is manipulated into believing wrong things. He's manipulated to believe things that aren't true. He is manipulated at the beginning to believe that Don Pedro is flirting with Hero when Don Pedro is just going to be a wingman to Claudio, and Don Pedro actually says, hey, look, I'm gonna talk up your personality to Hero so that she fancies you back. And then Don John comes and says, hey, look, my brother Don Pedro is flirting with Hero, and Claudio immediately believes it. He is so gullible and so immature and so fickle meaning someone who is very quick to change their mind, that he believes things almost immediately and they don't seem to be true, and he just randomly believes these things and just starts to become convinced as if with no evidence. Whereas Beatrice and Benedict, where they're manipulated by their friends, they're manipulated to believe that they're in love with each other, which, as we talk about in the previous two videos, is actually true. There is that kind of attraction between them from the beginning of the play. The two are constantly talking about each other. They're constantly preoccupied with each other. And we talk about how their banterous relationship is a form of flirting with each other. And all they need is that kind of nudge in the right direction. So where Claudio is manipulated to believe in wrong and harmful things about Hero, Beatrice and Benedict are manipulated to believe the right things about each other. And it goes even further when we realise that Beatrice and Benedict actually don't believe, especially Beatrice, she doesn't believe by midpoint of the play, and she's one of the few people who doesn't believe that Hero has done anything wrong. Beatrice is very, very steadfast. She's faithful. She believes that Hero is pure, that she is right, that she has done nothing wrong, even when everyone else believes wrongly of Hero, when Claudio actually tells her off in front of everyone on their wedding day. And Beatrice actually goes to Benedict and says, hey, if you love me, you'll be on my side. And Benedict does love her and remains on Beatrice's side. And we realise by the end of the play that Beatrice and Benedict seem to be manipulated into believing that they're in love with each other, which is right in the play's eyes. It is the right thing to be manipulated into. But they are not able to be manipulated into believing the wrong thing. On the other hand, Claudio seems to be manipulated into believing the wrong thing all the time. He's manipulated by Don John, and that makes him into this weak, gullible, kind of sad character who is just constantly believing the wrong thing about the wrong people, and at the end of the play is made to repent. Now, as a consequence, His character development is very little. I was meant to say very, by the way. I am so sorry about that. His character development is not that much at all. He doesn't change that much. He believes the same things over and over again. He doesn't seem to kind of grow. We're kind of left at the end of the play with this lingering sense that even after the play, if someone comes to Claudio and says, hey, guess what? Hero is cheating on you, and Claudio would quickly believe that. Or you could literally go to Claudio and say, hey, guess what? My hair is blonde and you're standing there with black hair, and he would believe you. That's how gullible he is. So you know what? When it comes to Claudio, we're just not sure. You could tell him anything. He's a bit stupid. And so because his character is so small, with such little development, we could say that Shakespeare uses Claudio as a symbol for what Much Ado About Nothing, the play, is. It's a play about little consequences. What I mean by this is that Claudio's one-dimensional, lack of character development kind of personality means that he represents the play perfectly. Now, if you look at the plot of the play, in actuality, other than Beatrice and Benedict falling in love and realising that they are perfect for each other and that's it, there are very little consequences in the play. Claudio mistreats Hero, but at the end of the play, he gets her, right? They marry, right? Hero doesn't hold Claudio accountable for anything. Even Beatrice, who is the angriest at Claudio, midpoint of the play, she wants to kill this man. That's how angry she is. That's not light-hearted, guys. She literally is so angry with Claudio for mistreating Hero and embarrassing her in front of everyone that she literally wants to see Claudio dead. Even at the end of the play, Beatrice seems to forgive Claudio. Everything is fine. Everything is smoothed over. Even Leonato, who doesn't even believe his own daughter, midpoint of the play, when he actually believes that his daughter is capable of cheating, and he says as much, and he's very embarrassed about her. Even he doesn't get punished. No one gets punished for believing the worst of an innocent woman, right? And there's that bit at the end of the play as well, where everyone thinks Hero is dead. They think that Hero has literally killed herself because she is so upset about being slandered. And it turns out that she's not dead. So there's very little consequences. There's no permanent action taken to hold anyone accountable for how they have treated Hero, really. So the play is about this little bubble in Italy somewhere, where these few characters mingle with each other, have relationships, do their thing, and end up, at the end of the play, scot-free. They are not held accountable, nothing serious happens. This play is like an idyllic little bubble where the characters do their thing, say what they want to each other, and at the end of the play, everything is good, everything is happy, and nothing serious actually happens. So, I think Claudio represents this perfectly. Claudio, who is so gullible that he is able to believe whatever he is told by the bad guy. And at the end of the day, he ends up happy. So what he believes and how he treats Hero because of what he believes doesn't impact his own happiness. He is not held accountable. There are very little consequences to his actions. Claudio, in a sense, encompasses the entire play, Much Ado About Nothing. This lightheartedness, but also this sense that even though the play is lighthearted, there is also this kind of deeper sense that it is not just a light-hearted play, but it is a play which focuses on a lack of accountability. Or, even unlike other plays that Shakespeare has written, for example, Othello, where Othello, the main character in the play, accuses his wife of cheating on him and he kills himself. Looking at this play, Claudio does very similar things to Hero. He accuses her of being unfaithful. However, and it even comes so close where he thinks that Hero has died because of his actions. But it's all okay in the end. Hero hasn't died. Everyone's just playing a trick on Claudio and it's all good in the end. Unlike real life, unlike even other plays by Shakespeare, Claudio, he is not held accountable for how he treats his betrothed. He is completely let off. And so he really does reflect this kind of comedic nature, or this light-hearted nature of the play, to the point where we're kind of frustrated with him and frustrated with the play as a whole. We kind of wonder, how can Shakespeare, the same Shakespeare who's written huge tragedies about people literally suffering because of their beliefs. Think about a lot of Shakespeare's tragedies which result in characters being punished for their actions. This comedy is a comedy because none of the characters are punished for their actions. They just get off scot-free. And so I think Claudio is the perfect example of this kind of scot-free, no punishment, no accountability kind of representation. So yeah, as a consequence, I've said this already, but he is a real symbol. Like I said, we are kind of frustrated with the play at the end. Everyone just seems to be okay with things. Everyone just seems to be like laughing it off. But some really serious things do happen in the play. I mean, a woman is accused of infidelity back in those times. That was huge. And also, there's hints that she has committed suicide. I know it's not real. Hero doesn't actually kill herself, but there are real hints, and none of the characters seem to be that, especially Claudio. He doesn't seem all that fussed about it. I mean, he seems kind of sad, but in the next breath, he's willing to marry anyone who Leonato proposes he marry, and he's actually willing to marry a woman he's never seen just to try and make it up to Leonato, but he doesn't have to do that anyway, because it turns out Hero isn't dead. So yeah, it's kind of mad, but I guess we can't even hold Claudio responsible because he is a representation of how closed off the characters are from reality. It's a play that doesn't hold many of the characters accountable, and as a consequence, it is supposed to be taken as light-hearted. We are not supposed to consider any kind of reality or consequence in this play. So here I've got some quotes, and you'll notice that I have a few more quotes than usual. Usually I just have 4, but because I was just so wanting to show you how Claudio changes. So this is Claudio in Act 1, Scene 1. He is talking about how much he fancies Hero to Benedict, and oh no, I don't think he's talking to Benedict. He's just talking about how much he fancies Hero. I don't remember who he's talking to, it's not important. But he basically says, "How sweetly you do minister to love, that no loves grief by his complexion. But lest my liking might too sudden seem, I would have salved it with a longer treatise." And what he's saying here is, oh yeah, I'm really in love with Hero. Whoever he's talking to, he's saying, wow, like, you really seem to understand how in love I am with Hero because of my complexion. Like, I'm obviously lovesick. You can see that I am sick with love. But lest my liking might seem too sudden, I would have salved it with a longer treatise. And he's basically saying here that I'm worried that you think I've fallen in love with Hero too quick. So here we go. We've got a bit of self-awareness here. He's saying, I'm kind of worried. I think it's Leonato, actually. I think he's talking to Hero's dad. He's saying, I'm kind of worried that you think I've fallen in love with Hero too suddenly. I would have preferred to talk a little bit longer about how in love I am, right? So what he's saying here is with a little burst of self-awareness that he kind of understands how quickly he seems to have fallen in love with Hero. Now, assuming you flicked through the play and you're quite familiar with it, yeah, I mean, this is definitely very self-aware because unlike Beatrice and Benedict, we are not introduced into this banterous, flirty, self-confident, independent kind of relationship where we have two people who seem to hate each other so much that they just kind of spark a fire between each other and you're just wondering, oh my God, just fall in love already. No, that's a cross because we're not here, we're not with them anymore. We're with Hero and Claudio, who just randomly seem to fall in love. It's so quick, it's so sudden, and we're kind of introduced to that. Shakespeare's almost saying, yeah, I understand. Even Claudio understands how hasty he seems to be acting, how random it all seems to be. And he even says in one quote that he actually fell in love with Hero before he went off to war, but he wasn't able to approach her. It's definitely too perfect, because not long after, Act 2, Scene 1, in fact, that is not too long after at all, we have this. Now, this is our first manipulation of Claudio by Don John. This is our first case of manipulation. And Don John, who's slinking around being evil, says, hey, look, Don Pedro, the prince, is flirting with Hero. He is wooing Hero for himself. And Claudio immediately believes Don John, immediately, over his own friend Don Pedro, who is actually there helping Claudio. He immediately believes Don John, and he says, in this little monologue, he says, so certain so the prince woos for himself. Friendship is constant in all other things, save in the office and affairs of love. What he's saying here is friendship is constant in most things, except in the workplace and in affairs of love. So what Claudio is really saying here is that he's kind of baiting himself out as a bad friend. He's saying, yeah, I kind of understand why Don Pedro would want Hero, even though he's my friend, because loyalty only exists unless we're considering the workplace or love, right? And then friendship is not constant. We can't help but contrast this little pathetic monologue with Beatrice, who actually doesn't seem to believe that friendship is constant except in affairs of love and the office. Beatrice believes friendship is constant in any circumstance, and she doesn't let love get in the way of her friendship with Beatrice. Remember, Beatrice is the only one who believes Hero is faithful when everyone else has abandoned her. Beatrice is not fickle. Beatrice is loyal. And here Claudio kind of shows how disloyal he is. He's kind of saying, oh, like, I understand why Don Pedro would betray me and go for Hero himself, because that's natural. And he's kind of saying, oh, I would do the same. So yeah, we've got this real contrast, and it really just shows once again how Claudio is very fickle, he's very unreliable, and he's also incredibly gullible, of course, because he believes that Don Pedro would do this to him, when in fact Don Pedro is not doing this to him at all. Claudio is being manipulated. Therefore, all hearts in love use their own tongues. Yeah, again, what he's saying is that everyone who's in love will just betray their friends for love. That's not true. Beatrice doesn't. Let every eye negotiate for itself, and trust no agent, for beauty is a witch, against whose charms faith melteth into blood. So beauty is a witch. What he's saying here is that Hero's beauty is almost witchcraft, right? Against whose charms faith melteth into blood. So again, we're really getting a sense of Claudio's relationships with his friends. In the face of beauty, we've got that kind of noun charms, which really suggests, again, this idea that Claudio believes beautiful women are all just poisonous witches, which again is kind of sexist in a way. It's kind of weird. He's saying that beauty is a witch against whose charms faith melteth. So even loyalty between friends will melt into blood, into violence, right? So what he's saying is that in the face of a beautiful woman, any friendship would just break, because instead of being loyal to each other, those two friends would most definitely go ahead and betray each other in order to have that beautiful woman. And we get the sense that Claudio is not just fickle, he's not just gullible when it comes to Hero, he actually is just not at all reliable with his friends. He is capable of believing that Don Pedro, who is his friend, would actually just betray him. This is an accident of hourly proof, which I mistrusted not. And then he goes, farewell, therefore, Hero, in this really dramatic kind of monologue situation, and it's completely stupid because not long after, Don Pedro comes back and says to Claudio, hey, guess what? Hero likes you back. And Claudio completely forgets about this whole monologue and just, he's like, yay, oh my god, Hero likes me back. It's kind of comedic. And not in the sense of a comedy, it's kind of darkly comedic, because you get this sense that Shakespeare is really mocking Claudio's fickleness and his unreliability here, because he makes this dramatic ass monologue, and in the next scene he completely forgets about this monologue. As soon as Don Pedro comes back and says, hey bro, guess what, Hero likes you back, well done, you're gonna get married, Claudio completely forgets and he's like, oh my god, yay, thank god, I really wanted this. So as I was saying, not too long after, it's Act 2 Scene 1 is when Claudio makes this dramatic kind of monologue about how beauty is a witch and how all women are basically witches, or beautiful women are witches, and how they will break up any friendship. Same Act 2, same Scene 1. Claudio is very happy again because he realizes that no one was betraying anyone and Don Pedro was being a good friend and wingmanning him, and he gets to marry Hero. So he says, silence is the perfectest herald of joy, I were but little happy. If I could say how much, ladies, you are mine, I am yours, I give away myself for you and dote upon the exchange. So he's basically saying, I'm speechless with joy, silence is the perfectest herald of joy. And look at this dramatic language. We've got this hyperbole, perfect test. When something is the most, it is the best. There is no way you can top it, and that's what's known as hyperbole. And typically, hyperbolic language is used in dramatic scenes to kind of express how someone is over the top overjoyed to the point where it's kind of funny. Silence is the perfectest herald of joy. I am speechless. I'm so happy I'm silent. I were but little happy if I could say how much. So he's basically saying, if I started telling you how happy I was, that would show that I wasn't happy. So I'm just going to be silent to show you how I am the most happiest person, the perfectest. Again, really kind of just shows how dramatic he is. And also, you really shouldn't believe his words. It's kind of a funny, ironic little joke because he's saying silence is the perfectest herald of joy, that if I was to speak about how happy I am, that would be showing I'm not happy, but he's speaking. So that's kind of funny, it's kind of ironic, it's kind of Shakespeare's way of being like, haha, check this guy out, he's ridiculous, isn't he? Lady, as you are mine, I am yours, I give away myself for you and dote upon you. That verb really suggests devotion, doesn't it? And again, we've got this sense of complete irony because not long later, Claudio's going to be manipulated again. So he accuses Hero, he says, out on these seeming, I will write against it. Basically saying, you're a slut. You seem to me as Diane in her orb, as chaste as is the bud ere it be blown. So you seemed to me as the goddess Diana. Diana, of course, is the goddess of the moon, and she is also a virgin. She is the goddess of chastity. Interestingly enough, the goddess Diana is also a hunter, which is quite interesting because when we look at Hero, she's not much of a hunter, is she? She's not much of a predator. She's not much of an active personality. She's just kind of quiet, doing her thing, letting people do what they want to her. But anyway, that's quite interesting to me that just because Diana's a virgin doesn't mean she's not powerful in her own right. But of course, Claudio is going to get it wrong, isn't he? He gets everything wrong. So he's going to just look at the virginity thing about Diana and use that metaphor. And of course, he is using that metaphor, isn't he? It's a metaphor of Greek goddesses. He's saying, you seem to me as chaste and virginal as Diana. And an interesting note as well, Diana is the goddess of the countryside as well. Like, she is known to kind of live or kind of rule over the countryside. Remember that point I was making in the previous slide about how all the characters are just in their own little bubble, away from everyone else, isolated. And that's kind of what the countryside is. It's away from the city. It's away from everyone else. And we do get that kind of connection between Diana, goddess of the countryside, being equated to Hero, and how Claudio sees Hero as this kind of example of isolation, being away from everyone else, and therefore he can kind of say what he wants to her because no consequences will happen. So there is this idea of the countryside representing isolation, representing a bubble of people who are not impacted by any large-scale situations. They're just doing their thing, no consequences, nothing. As chaste as is the bud ere it be blown, so chaste is to be pure, to be virginal. But you are more intemperate in your blood than Venus. Venus was the goddess of sex, sensuality. That is what Claudio is saying in his metaphor. He's saying, you're not chaste like Diana, you are sexual like Venus, you're intemperate meaning not calm. hot-blooded. He completely gets it wrong. I mean, Hero is the most temperate, most calm, most stable person. She just kind of sits there and lets people do things to her. But he is suggesting that she is hot-blooded, that she is angry in her blood, that the fact that she, has a sexual appetite means that she is just so angry and crazy, and the complete opposite of what the goddess Diana represents, which is that calmness, that countryside isolation, that idea of the moon as well, which is very cool. The kind of equation of the moon being up at nighttime when usually the weather is cooler. So you are more intemperate in your blood than Venus, or those pampered animals that rage in savage sensuality. And we've got some nice bit of alliteration there. And he's saying you're basically Venus, the goddess of sexuality and anger and passion, and you're an animal. You're a pampered animal. Look at that adjective, pampered. Now, our definition of pampered means to be spoilt, but the original actual meaning of pampered basically means when you indulge in your appetites, when you kind of let yourself do whatever you want to do. So he's saying you're like those pampered animals. You're an animal, not a human being, who indulges in every single appetite of the flesh. You kind of don't hold yourself back. You're doing whatever your body wants you to do. That rage, again, this idea of raging, intemperate, this kind of really angry language. He is the angry one, but he is actually suggesting that Hero is full of rage, full of savage sensuality, full of animalistic appetites, and there's this real kind of semantic field, isn't there? Sensuality, sex, rage, just a whole amount of emotion in this. He is accusing Hero of being angry, of being crazy and crazed, when Hero definitely isn't any of that. If anything, Claudio is the angry one. He is the one in a rage. So he's kind of putting all his emotion out into Hero. He's blaming Hero for all these things that he actually is. And he's actually the fickle one. He is actually the one who has betrayed Hero, not the other way around, in believing other people over her and not trusting her. Again, this idea of beauty being a witch, of faith melting into blood. There's this idea of animalistic imagery. And then Act 5, Scene 3 is when Claudio realises that he was wrong. Hero was not cheating on him, and everyone attempts to kind of convince Claudio that Hero has died, that she's killed herself because of his words. I guess you could say this is manipulation 3, because Hero is perfectly alive, but Claudio believes it, as he believes everything he's told. So he's reading this at her fake funeral after Leonardo, Hero's dad, has said, look, your words killed Hero, and she was perfectly innocent, by the way. And so Claudio says, done to death by slanderous tongues was Hero that here lies. And I picked this quote out because that contrast between his angry monologue here and then his just 2 sentences that he has left to say when he's supposedly mourning Hero. It's again this 180 switch between anger to calm or repentance, and slanderous, that adjective slanderous, when he says slanderous tongues, he's really, again, not taking accountability, is he? He's not saying done to death by my slanderous tongue. He's just saying slanderous tongues, and he's suggesting that there's more than one person responsible for basically driving Hero to kill herself. Now, yeah, I just thought it was really interesting, and just really sealed how annoying and irritating and immature and pathetic Claudio really is. He's not taking full accountability, and he really seems to represent what this entire play is about in these 2 sentences. This idea that he won't say, I did this. He's saying, she's done to death by slanderous tongues. Whose slanderous tongues? Clearly Claudio's, but he won't take accountability for that. And then lastly, Act 5, Scene 4, the end of the play. Just before Hero reveals herself as actually alive, Claudio, in his kind of shame, agrees to marry a woman of Leonato's choosing. So basically what happens is, because Leonato is so angry with Claudio for killing his daughter and blaming his daughter for wrong things, it turns out, that it was all manipulated by Don John. Claudio says, okay, I'm really sorry, Leonato. What I'll do in order to make up to you for killing your daughter is to marry anyone you choose. I hold my mind, were she an Ethiop, even if she was from Ethiopia, even if she was black. So basically saying in this sentence that even if she was a black woman from Ethiopia, even then I would marry her. He's basically saying that he will marry anyone Leonato chooses to give him because he is so sorry for killing Hero with his horrible slanderous words. So yeah, he doesn't take accountability in these two sentences, but he knows he's wrong because he is willing to marry anyone that Leonato gives to him. But I think this really also kind of cements how fickle he is and how unreliable and how pathetic he is. He seems to be okay with marrying any woman, and eventually, we do realize that the woman that Leonato has presented to Claudio on their wedding day is actually Hero. She's not dead, she's alive, and Claudio, gets to have Hero, and Hero forgives Claudio, and everything is all good. But yeah, sorry if this was kind of confusing and kind of crazy and all over the place, but I think it really definitely encompasses who Claudio is, this crazy, confusing, all over the place kind of character. Even though he's all over the place, he's not able to stick to one idea. He's a great representation of what this play is about. Crazy, but at the end, everything works out and no one has to suffer the consequences of their actions, except Don John, who is the villain, but he's just the villain. But yeah, that is the end of the video. I hope you got some clarity over Claudio's personality. Next videos to come, but please like, please share, please subscribe. It takes a lot of effort to make these videos and I am working full time as well. So yes, please do like, share and subscribe if you want to see more. And thank you very much.